Hey, everybody.
Hey everyone, happy Tuesday, and welcome to this edition of Hook, Line, and Striker.
I'm Josh.
And I'm Emily. And we are laughing because we were just here talking to John and Calvin and almost got wrapped up in the conversation. And I didn't prepare them very well. So
Yeah, we got to talking and then the timer caught up with us. So.
But that's what happens when you go live.
Right.
And so it's going to be a lot of fun. We're here with John and Calvin and can't wait to hear all about it. So thanks for being here.
Yeah, hi guys.
Hey, you're welcome anytime. Yeah, glad to be here.
So my first question always is kind of a really generic one. Tell us about yourselves.
We are from Iowa. I am a guide, a fishing guide, and I've guided I am beginning my 21st open water season now. And Calvin is my son. He's 18. He's a senior in high school. He's been helping me for a long time, not in his own boat, but on the ice. He's been taking groups for me for a couple of years now, and it's worked out real well. Yep,
That's
just love getting out.
And I imagine at this point you don't have ice anymore.
No, we do.
We have a lot of ice out on the lake, but it's just a matter of you're not able to get a boat out quite yet, but you're able to get out onto the river and still able to get out and fish.
The smaller lakes in the area, the ice has gone off, most of them, especially from here south. But we have larger lakes here, and they won't go out. Average ice out on West Okobojis is, I think, April 14th, April 9th, somewhere 9th to 14th, right in there. So, yeah, it's going to be a little while yet. I think East Lake is probably about 80% clear, I think.
Something like
that. Yeah, it's coming. It won't be long.
Well, and I have to say, I'm really surprised to hear that. That's something that I didn't realize about Iowa, that you guys would have ice so late. I mean, I guess I don't know why I'm surprised, but that's a really cool thing to hear.
Yeah, it's, people think of Iowa, oh, it's warmer down there than it is in Minnesota. I think not. They for years, they tried to talk me into wearing a Predator suit, and I did. And this year I switched to a climate. I ain't going back. Those Predators are nice, but when you sit out in it all day long, every single day, no matter what the conditions, I got to have that climate.
Yeah, so that's really interesting. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say there was we went up for a couple photo shoots up on Mille Lacs, one for Otter, one for Striker, and we always compared the weather conditions from the days that we'd be there and the days that we're down here. And almost every day that we went up to Mille Lacs, it was actually warmer there than it was down here.
That's really funny.
I don't know how that happens, but
it's crazy.
North doesn't always translate to colder temperatures. Depends on where you're at, I guess.
Oh, well, and I got to say, I just got out on the boat and that was a whole lot of fun, but I'm really jealous for anybody who does still have ice. I guess the grass is always greener or the ice is always thicker or something like that.
Well, you know what? We have a lot of ice, but trying to get to it, you'd need an airboat or hovercraft.
Okay.
Dave Koontz has a hovercraft, I think, doesn't he?
Yep.
But hey, yeah, we still got a lot of ice out there, and it's going to take a good couple of winds and some more rain. We have had rain the last 2 days, so I'm still betting for the over April 1st for ice out on West Okobojis.
Yeah. Well, and I'm interested hearing you guys talk about, that you used to like the Predator suit, but then you switched to the climate. We talk to people and they tend to be such die hard about their suit, So what is it that prompted a change for you?
Well, it just, okay, I had a Predator and I got offered a suit of my choice. So I said, let's try because I'm out in it every day, man, and I got to be out there regardless of the conditions. I can't just say, well, I'm not going out today. That doesn't work that way. And so I just thought, let's switch. I mean, the Predator is a very nice light. It's, I miss how light the suit is, as far as weight goes. But and then on those fringe days, late season, when it's starting to really warm up outside, I mean, we had we're fishing in 50 to 60 degree temperatures on the ice for the last 10 days. and those were a little warm. Calvin switched back to his Predator then.
Yeah.
I stuck with my Predator, but I'm an old man. I get cold easy.
Well, and I have to admit, I like the climate suit. I like, being able to take those liners out. I hear what you're talking about, though. There is kind of a difference in, the weight between the suits, and the climate is still super comfortable, even with the liners in. But I find once I stuff everything in my pockets, because there's a million pockets, it's amazing how much that adds to the suit.
It does. I mean, pockets are a good thing most of the time. But when you're starting to weigh 7 to 10 pounds heavier because of them, oh man, it's amazing what I find in the pockets at the end of the season.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Oh my goodness, that's awesome. So we are at the switchover of the seasons here. So do you then switch to rain gear? Do you take your suits into the open water season?
You know what? I do a lot of our walleye bite here. Early on, our walleye season really doesn't open. We have an opener that's a week before the Minnesota opener, so it's the first weekend in May. And so I do most of my walleye fishing at night because it's very hard to get them during the day here. Our water is just gin clear. You've got
20 some foot of visibility.
Yeah,
at times.
20. I'd say even 40. I've seen the bottom in 40 feet of water on a sunny day when it's calm. And he can attest. He's a diver.
When I go out scuba diving, I've gone down to 65 foot and had crystal clear water and fish swimming around me. So it's really crazy seeing that.
But anyway, what was your question again? I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, it's all great stuff. Do you take your suits into your open water season? Yeah,
I do wear my coats for sure and my bibs in those night guiding trips when I'm fishing for walleye in May. Because it gets cold. Once that sun goes down, you're on the water. It is, the air, you're sitting on the water. So the air basically assumes the water temperature, and it's cold.
Degrees.
So I'm always wearing my striker, my winter float suit at night during May when I'm out there. But we have the gear, the rain gear too. That's very nice. I wear the
Evolves.
Yeah, he's got an Evolve, and I have an Evolve also. We love them. I think we're going to try the insulated ones this year. We'll see how those work.
Yeah, I actually have that same rain suit, but I'm also interested in that insulated capability of the new one. The funny thing about the rain suits is if it's warm enough, then the rain doesn't bother me. But when it's cold like that, and I've tried wearing my bibs in rain before, and it wasn't the most unsuccessful trip ever. But if you could have something that's made for the purpose, I'm really interested in staying warm and dry.
Yeah, it keeps the wind off of you, which does keep you warm. But, one of the main things is, we get rain on those hot days in late June sometimes. And it's just too muggy and hot to wear most other rain suits. But these Evolve suits are breathable. I mean, it's amazing how it doesn't trap your body heat in. And I don't understand what the technology is there. But I love how I can wear that Evolve suit on a hot day, and I'm not overheating. It's wonderful.
Yeah, that's really awesome. So Calvin, I guess I have a question for you. You had brought up, scuba diving, and I'm really interested in your perspective as somebody who gets down under the water there. Has that changed your perspective of fishing at all?
You know what? That's a great question. It really all depends on the time of year you get out there and how deep you go, and just the ability to you can even get down and get up close, especially with smallmouth.
You can hand feed.
Yeah, you can just hand feed all the smallmouth in the world down there. They're not afraid of you. I've had muskies swim alongside me, and my job in the summer, I'm not a fishing guide with him, but my job is I scuba dive every day, pulling weeds and working and doing that. And I found one of the most aggressive fish in the entire lake are actually pumpkin seed, sunfish. I'm sitting there and I'll be sitting pulling weeds and doing that for the company, and I'll have them bite me. I'll have them smack my mask as I'm swimming. They're just so aggressive that it's no wonder that over time they're kind of starting to take over.
It's a good thing they don't weigh 50 pounds.
Yeah,
right?
no kidding. They're fun. They're fun fighting fish, and it's fun getting the opportunity to get out there and see everything from a new perspective.
Well, okay, so first question, what is it that you're hand feeding smallmouth? Because I'm going to put that on my hook.
I mean, you can even sit down there with just a plain rubber worm that you can hand feed them. You can hand feed them crayfish and all that.
Leeches.
They love leeches in our lake for sure.
Oh my goodness. I guess I'm just really shocked by, you hear so often about fish being spooky. If you walk on the ice too hard, if you throw the wrong jig out there, oh, it's the wrong color, and sometimes those factors do make a difference in getting a bite or not. But I also love hearing the total opposite end of that, maybe fish are a lot more interactive, or inquisitive than we typically think of them.
I think a big part of it is their curiosity of what's down there. And if something's down there that they've not seen before, like say someone down there scuba diving, that they come in to investigate, they just kind of keep an eye on it. And if they see you have food, then they'll come closer. And if you start off just feeding them and letting whatever you have swim away just a little bit, and then it gets them closer and closer until you're close enough to hand feed them.
So I'm going to hire him to be down there on a slow day so he can hook those fish right up for me. He can dangle my bait right in front of their mouth for me, and all that. So all the people in my boat will be guaranteed to catch big fish.
Oh, but it does remind me, if you've seen those crazy videos in the summer and like somebody has a dock somewhere and they like have been throwing food in and the fish get used to it, but it gets to the point where they can just dip their fingers in and like catch a bass, like pick up a big old it's like,
yeah, that's just
you
crazy.
wonder how that happens, but you're describing exactly that. If the fish are comfortable with that situation, if they can depend on food and come to not be afraid of you, I mean, that's a really crazy situation.
Fish are spooky. I mean, you can scare them by jumping up and down in your boat. You can, they become more aware or cautious of things around them, I think, when you start making noise like that.
Especially ice fishing. I mean, this year we saw a lot of that. You couldn't, in 20 foot of water, you couldn't walk over them without spooking them. I mean, it was just crazy.
Yeah, you could watch them move in schools if you started walking toward them. It was frustrating to see, but that's the way it goes. But I think with his being a diver, I think when you're down there in their environment, I think they're not that spooky.
Yeah,
that's the way it sounds. I'm not a diver, but
yeah. I also love what you're saying though, like, even the predatory factor or something, well, you didn't say a bluegill, you said a pumpkin seed. Yeah. That they can be territorial enough to come and, nip at your mask or whatever, that's pretty bold for a little fish.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, they bite harder than you would expect a little panfish to bite too. It's pretty fun.
It's pretty fun.
It is. It's fun seeing them like that.
I had a client that got his nipple bit off by a pumpkin seed. But
so how does it happen?
Me. Obviously, he wasn't in the water with me, but they were just out lounging around, just swimming, and he was on one of those Maui mats. He had his arms up like this, and one came right under the Maui mat and got him. So keep your arms down.
Yeah.
I'm sure that there's a whole bunch of jokes there, but I guess I'm going to go around. I'm going to go around of saying that I would like to fish there with hook and line someday, because whatever kind of bluegill or pumpkin seed or whatever can do that, like I would like to pull that up and check that out.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, that's really funny. The other thing that I'm thinking about scuba diving that I'm really jealous of, kind of switching tracks here though, do you ever go down there and find like a crib or a rock pile or something unexpected?
I don't know if there's anything unexpected that I found diving. There's there are things that I have found, but I'm not allowed to say, just because
it wasn't his find.
Yes,
really.
It wasn't my find. Someone called me to tell me they found something on their depth finder, and they had me go down and take a look at it. That's all I can say.
That's all that you can say.
But
amazing thing.
Most of the time when I go diving, I'll go down and follow intake pipes, since there's a few cities around or a few cities around our lakes, and all the towns get their water from the different from the lakes. There's a couple different intake pipes around the lake, and usually we just go down, follow the pipes down. There's structure for fish, and so like when I got certified back in it would have been 2 years ago in November. I saw, I don't know, had to be 300 smallmouth, from all the way from 12 foot to 65 foot. And it was just ridiculous seeing them all the way down there.
That is really something. So I guess besides that, or, but for people who can't scuba dive, when you are looking to find places to fish, how do you go about that then?
Structure. I mean, it's all about, it goes,
piles, weed lines.
Yeah, rock piles, weed lines, everything. And the more you get to know the lake, the more you get to know the structure. And having done it for 20 plus years, it's the main lake that I like to fish is 3,600 acres. And the second one I fish is about 2,900 acres. And there, after 20 years, you pretty much know every square inch of the bottom. But the thing that made me a better fisherman overnight was back in, I think it was 2001. I bought my very first Markham camera, and I spent probably an entire week with that camera in the water, just drifting and looking and drifting and watching. And when you stumble upon a boulder or a rock pile or a weed patch or weed line, whatever, and you see how those fish are relating and why they're there and what they're trying to do. And one of the things that I learned very quickly is when you find places like that, you mark them on your GPS. But back then we didn't have mapping GPS back then. I was lining up houses the first year. This is terrible. But the first year I lined up houses with boat hoists, not realizing that the next year those boat hoists aren't going to be in the exact same spot. So my triangulations for my first season were gone out the door. Kind of like when my daughter erased my Navionics app. That was fun. And there was no way to get those waypoints back. That was fun. No, that wasn't funny at all. Anyway, that's what you get for asking a kid to help you with your electronics.
She was like 22.
Yeah. But anyway, I needed her help. But I think the most important thing I learned is how fish related to structure, where they would sit, on a piece of structure, depending on where the sun was or what direction the wind was blowing. And then I also learned one very important thing out here. We have, like I mentioned before, we have gin clear water here. And it is so important when you come up onto a spot to fish it that you do not drive back and forth over top of it. The fish are gone then. And, you've got to be 30 feet of water before you're not spooking them. I mean, they'll spook in 20 feet.
Anchor and then cast.
Yeah. So you approach that waypoint from upwind, and then you anchor. Now it's so easy with the spot lock on your Minn Kota to just spot lock above your spot and pitch to it. And I learned very quickly that the easiest way to put your bait on the money on that spot was with a slip bobber. So I do a ton of slip bobber fishing. Now, I get a lot of beginners in my boat, and that's the perfect way for a beginner to fish because you can set the depth form and everything and just throw it out there and wait for that bobber to go down. They reel it in and catch the fish. But if you're not slip bobber fishing, if you're jigging or whatever, it makes it a little more challenging. So, if I know where the structure is, I know where the fish are. And I just don't want to drive over it. Make sure I don't. If I drive over it, I got to get out of there and go somewhere else.
So when we're talking about slip bobbers, what is it that you're fishing for there?
Everything. We
Almost
get
7 species a day.
Yeah, we probably average, depending on what you're using for bait. You know, it's easy to go get 7 species in 4 hours. I had a guy from Holland out one time, and he wanted to catch as many species as he possibly could. And I had him out for a little more than 4. My normal trips are 4 hours, but I think I had him out for 6 or 7 hours, and he caught 11 species. So the last one to get was probably one of the easier ones. It was a smallmouth. We could not get that smallmouth, but we got it eventually. And so yeah, you can get with the bobbers. You know, it depends on what you use for bait. If you hang a leech under there, you're going to get walleyes and all kinds of bass. Even
bass,
bluegills love them. A little later in the season, when the water warms up, they eat big things. The water warms up, but yeah, it's a neat lake. We have a great fishery here, and it's just a lot of fun because you never know what's going to be on the other end of that line when you're fighting it. We had a guy just a couple weeks ago. I think it was on WHO in out of Des Moines. They did a big story on it. This guy caught. We were guiding him, and he caught about a 36-inch muskie, I'm guessing, on 3-pound test, and one of the John Grosvenor ultralight rods. And it was
just a little 3mm tungsten gold jig head.
Yeah, and I don't know how he landed that thing, but it took about a half hour. And they're out of season, so you don't want to gaff it and hurt it. So Calvin, it sat there, and it was all tuckered out, and its nose was at the bottom of the hole. And we had probably close to 24 inches of ice. Calvin's arms aren't much longer than that.
I'm short. It's a long reach for me.
And he got down there and put his ear to the ice, and he reached down there and he grabbed that thing under the gill and pulled it up. I couldn't believe it. But if Calvin would have been there, I don't think we'd have ever gotten it in.
Well, especially how it was hooked.
Yeah, it was a bizarre hook. The jig went through the muskie's mouth and out the gill, and then it hooked his pectoral fin, kind of. It was on the other side of the gill plate, I guess. So the hook was actually on the outside, but the line went through his mouth. So he ate the jig, or it went into his mouth somehow. But how does that happen that a muskie doesn't bite that 3-pound test, or it gets caught on a tooth and it's just gone? I don't understand. But hey, look at that.
Oh, that cat. You can always guarantee when the video comes on is when he wants to come out.
Cameo from the cat.
I always wonder if he wants to come on the boat, but I'm not convinced he'd like that.
Right. Muskie bait.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Talk about, I had a guy one time. I don't like to let people bring their dogs on my boat. Number one, I have an allergy to short-haired animals, but that if I'm away from them, if I don't touch them, I'm usually fine. But this guy wanted to bring this wiener dog on board, and this was like a 40-pound wiener dog, and his little legs stuck out like this. He couldn't even stand up because his legs just didn't come out of the body long enough to. And so he carried this thing wherever he went. Anyway, he had it up on the back bench of my boat, and we were slip bobber fishing. So every time we throw that bobber out, that dog sees that bobber out there 20 yards, and he just starts yapping. Just yap, 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 yap. And it was so annoying. After 3 hours of this, I'd had it up to here. And finally, that dog couldn't help himself, and he wiggled his way over the edge of the boat. Well, a big-bodied dog with no legs like that can't swim. And this guy is screaming and crying, my dog, my dog. I said, well, get your dog. He goes, I can't swim. I said, your dog doesn't look like it can swim either.
You're awful.
Yeah. So anyway, I grabbed my net and I leaned over the boat, and I was up to my shoulder in the water. I don't know how I did it, but I got that dog with my net as it was sinking into the abyss. And yeah.
So no more dogs in the boat.
Don't like dogs in the boat.
That's the moral of the story. No dogs or pets in the boat.
Oh my goodness. That's a really scary story.
I don't mean to sound heartless, but I was so tired of hearing that dog yap.
Yeah. But it does bring up a really great point though. And when we were on the river this weekend, because we actually do travel with our dog, Lumbold, but we actually were kind of remarking that it seemed like every single boat had a dog on it. And it was really, really surprising. So I'm going to guess just shout out to safety. If you do have a dog, like a bright colored vest goes a long way, especially we're fishing the river system. God forbid your dog falls out of the boat. Like that current goes really fast. Having that dog like in a life jacket, that could have changed everything.
Absolutely, yeah.
I don't think that's something that Stryker offers, but maybe hopefully one day in the future.
Yeah, doggy float suit. No, I have actually water skied on the Missouri River, and it's swift. It's like 7.5, almost 8 miles an hour. And with those whirlpools, when they come at you, and they like cling to you, and you can just feel it pulling you down. I mean, if you didn't have a life jacket on, you'd be gone. I mean, it's amazing the power of just the smallest whirlpools. Just feels like somebody pulling on your ankles the whole time. So, yeah, if you're on the river, especially with a dog or something, get a dog life jacket. I'm sure they make them.
Safety's first for everything. That goes for both your dog or your pets and yourself.
Absolutely. So with that being said, I'm looking a little bit at the comment section. So a lot of people checking in, saying hello. And so hello to all of you guys. Darren Schneider actually checking in, talking about bibs and jackets for early season. I think we're going to be talking to him coming up.
Yeah, I think so.
So that's going to be a really great time. And if anybody has
He's the line cutters guy, right?
Line cutters, Darren, that was actually
Darren
last
Green.
week. Yeah,
Last
Darren
week.
Green. Yeah.
Darren Green. Yeah. Okay.
Knew
Yeah.
it was a Darren.
Yeah, so that's a whole lot of fun. I do love those line cutters and being on the bibs this year. That is really a whole lot of fun.
It took me a while to get used to having it there, but once I got into the habit of using them, I love it. I mean, it's handy as heck.
Yeah, I do think so too. Well, and I always joke that I can use it to like open up a little bag of snacks if you can't get it open. But honestly, it makes it the most versatile tool out there.
For sure.
Oh my goodness. Awesome. People are ice fishing the perch rush up to my bait and just stop and look at it. Oh, let's ask that like a question. So in ice fishing, perch rush up to bait and just stop and look at it. So do you have a suggestion for Terry?
That's go home, stop it. We're not biting that day. No, I'm just kidding.
It's what it is it's all about keeping what you're doing and continuing doing that, because people a lot of times when they see the fish come in, they get excited, and even if just the slightest difference,
if your heart rate starts to go up, your jigging action starts to go up, and then they stop because
or you slow down, and it's
I was gonna say that to me.
There's a reason they came into your bait in the first place, and that's because they liked what you were doing. So why stop what you're doing or change it up? I mean, I get there's a lot of times where you accidentally do that, but all it is maintaining the same action that you're doing. And that's why you see a lot of those Wisconsin guys without electronics catch so much fish, is because they don't get excited when a fish
they
comes
don't
in.
know it's there. They don't know it's there, and they just keep that same motion, and boom, they catch the fish.
Yeah, that's a really great point.
But,
because Josh is.
You can mix it up, try different baits. I mean, around here we like to use maggots. Some people call them spikes. Some people call them. I tell everybody that in my fridge, I'm not married, so they're maggots. But the guys that are married have to call them spikes or wigglers, so they can keep them in the fridge without too much objection. So anyway, but yeah, I mean, I love to use maggots. Some people use minnow heads. I mean, there's days where they won't hit anything but a minnow, which is unusual around here. Most people catch theirs on spikes around here, I would say, or maggots.
Well, we have red bloodworms that they eat. We don't have any of the freshwater shrimp to get those big jumbo.
Yeah,
perch.
Our fish feed, our perch feed on bloodworms in the wintertime. And they're just a very, about an inch and a half long, and they're super skinny. I mean, you couldn't even use one for bait because you'd never be able to get it onto a hook. But they're kind of a dark red, maroon almost color. And if you can match that bait, we use a lot of red maggots. or red plastics, things that look the closest to those bloodworms that we can find. And that seems to work. But, like he was explaining, Calvin was explaining, it's all about keeping the same cadence that you got going, your same rhythm on your jig. Because if you change, if it's coming in on your bait and you change what you're doing, he's going to lose interest. I mean, he came in at it because he liked what he saw. That's what I tell everybody. But there are days where no matter what you do, it's a tough bite. Try a dead stick, try the cadence, try a bigger bait, try a smaller bait. It's just about trying different things.
Or even just pounding it off the bottom. If you just pound it off the bottom, stir up the sediment, the silt, the sand, whatever you're fishing in.
Because our perch here are eating bloodworms that live in the silt on the bottom. So those perch are working for those bloodworms. They're digging at the bottom constantly. Those bloodworms just don't come out of the bottom by themselves. The perch go in and root them out with their tails. They'll swipe their tails, and sometimes they'll use their nose too. Yeah, that's how they get at them. So stirring up the bottom with your jig is always, you got to try that. In fact, I used to. It's heavy.
Carry a downrigger.
Yeah, I used to carry a 8-pound downrigger ball with me on a rope, and I'd pound the bottom with that and get a whole big silt cloud. And that silt cloud would attract fish. So I thought I was a genius, but I didn't make that up. Somebody else told me that. I did it, and it worked. So.
That's awesome. Well, and I would also stop and think about how pressured is the water that you're fishing, because that can have a huge impact. Yep. If you are on water that those fish never see a hook, I mean, that's obviously a way different story than, we went down to Battle on Bago, and let me tell you what, those fish were so beat up from having cars drive over, from having snowmobiles, holes drilled everywhere, lines everywhere, all the kinds of baits that all these fishermen can throw at it. And one of the things that we found is, the least active possible minnow. You never know what is going to do it. And so, try all those different things, but examine kind of what's going on around you in the different elements, because that makes a big difference.
If you find a perch bite around here, it's not going to be a secret for more than a few days. Somebody's going to follow you out the bait shop the next day if they heard you had perch. So, and they do get pressured, and then they get in very tight bunches. And I mean, last year our bunch was probably 2 miles long of fishermen working the perch over that were in this deep trench. And the pressure is rough on fish.
A big thing with that pressuring, and how fish are pressured, is if you find like a group of people that are catching them, I'd say go fish the outskirts of that group, because that's where those pressured fish go, as they move out away from the other shelters and the high concentration of people. If you can get those fish that are roaming around the edges of those concentrations of people, that's where you'll get your more active fish.
It's not a foolproof way to find them, but boy, when you do find them on the outside of the group, that's nice. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, well, and certainly when you do find fish, or, as you're looking for them, I guess, the most important thing, I think, is don't compare yourself to people on social media, because you never know what season they're in. You never know what location they're in. I mean, I hate to say it, I'm probably just never going to catch a crappie that beats whoever's fishing in Canada. You can probably do better than me,
Yeah.
And so don't count somebody else's win as, don't compare like that.
I tell people, and I am right up front, if we have a good batch of fish, or if we have a nice fish that somebody's going to keep and put on the wall, I always try and get them to release the nice ones, but out of, several hundred people a year that you take fishing, there are going to be some that are kept and put on the wall. That's just the way it goes. But, I always tell people, if you can see what's in the background of my photo, odds are that fish was not caught there. We caught that fish somewhere else and went somewhere else and took the photo. And I'm upfront about it. I had a guy stop and yell at me. He saw me drive onto the ice, and he saw me get out and take pictures of this group, and he yelled at me. He said, "That's false advertising." I said, "I'm not advertising anything, you know. I mean, it's only false, you know." I was like, "Come on." But you know, you can't give up your spots. I mean, like I said, there's 3,600 acres on one lake, 2,900 acres on another lake, and then we've got 5,600, I think Spirit is. That's the biggest lake. But you know, just for the amount of people that come here to fish, there's not a ton of water. You know, so you need to protect your location.
Yeah, and you know, the other thing is some people will choose to black out the backgrounds and stuff, and you know, that's cool. I'm not here to judge what you do to your pictures, but if you can instead display something with a beautiful background, I mean, it really helps to kind of capture the moment of all of what you went through with that fish.
Yep. I mean, you know, I'm guilty of, I have blurred backgrounds, but I try not to
disturb the scenery too much.
Yeah, I don't want to destroy the scenery. Sometimes it's not possible, but yeah, I've done all that stuff. You know, here's one of my pet peeves in photos. Two things: a straight arm, you know, at least show a little arm bend. And then they know you're not, you know. I mean, and Calvin says to me one time, he goes, "Dad, you don't need to hold that fish so far out because it's big." You know?
Yeah, I mean, you got his biggest crappie ever this year. And it honestly looked bigger the closer he held it to his body, because then you can relate it to his body. And because, I mean, I know there's a lot of big social media accounts, YouTube channels, that they try getting the fish as close to the camera to make it look big. And when they actually get one that's really, really big, that's worth showing, it's distorted by the fact that you can't relate it to anything else in the picture.
And that's goes to my second part of the pet peeve is there are guys, and I've seen it done, and it's just gross, is they'll use a forceps to hold the gill, and then they hide their hand behind the fish, you know, so you cannot see any fingers or anything touching the fish. But they're holding it with a forceps to get it out further to make it look, I mean, come on, it's the oldest trick in the book. And it's just dumb. But if you put your fingers on that fish and show a little bit of finger somewhere, you don't have to show them all. I mean, some guys have big hands, so there's nothing you can do, you know, if you're showing a little bit of finger to hide his big hands. But, you know, just make sure you can give them something to relate to. Give them a little bit of finger, thumb in the mouth, whatever, maybe one finger around the tail, so you can give them something to relate to. Because if you know, if you don't see the hand, it's like, well, in my brain, I'm going, well, it can't be that big then, you know, or if the arm is straight, well, it's not that big. And you know who gave me that advice years ago, as I was just starting to be a guide? I happened to get to sit down and have a meal with a guy by the name of Tim Lesmeister, and he was a very prolific outdoor writer. I think he was a ghost writer for like Gary Roach. And several other big name pros. And I'm pretty sure he's in the Hall of Fame. I think. But anyway, I got to sit down and I asked him, because my hobby was photography. And I said, what makes a good fish picture? He says, number one, always show arm bend. Number two, you know, at least give them something, you know, don't try and hide your hands. And then number three, if you're doing a head-on shot, you know, turn sideways just a little bit, so you're not giving them the full frontal with your legs spread, you know, and so turn sideways and show it like this, or, you know, don't spread your legs for the camera, basically. And, those things will get you published. But anyway, that was one of the conversations I had 20 plus years ago, and it was great to have dinner with him that one time.
That's awesome. That's a good memory. I do have another ice question here, so if you're up for that.
Yeah.
On average, how many holes do you drill to stay on fish? So we were talking about, you know, whether that's the outskirts or whatever, that could be a lot of moving.
Here's the deal. When I've got a group, if I have to drill more than the number of holes there are in that group, it's a tough day. I want those fish found before my group arrives. I want to be able to go poke a hole and be right on those fish. Doesn't always work that way, but we spend days and days and days looking for fish before our groups arrive, and we're always looking for that new spot that we haven't ice fished or whatever, and sometimes we find it. But we will go. I think there was a period of 3 days where Calvin and me and Scott, the three of us, didn't catch a fish. I mean, we were just working new ice, new water, and
that's when you stumbled upon your biggest crappie, though, as well.
Yeah, and that's just it. I mean, I stumbled across the 16-inch crappie that I had this year, which is the biggest one I've ever caught out of these waters, and yeah, I mean, we drill a ton of holes. I mean, we went through. See, I like to use the light flight with a DeWalt, and I know I've gone through 3 DeWalt batteries. I think
2 4s and a 6.
No, it was a 4, 5, and a 6.
No, we have 2 4s. And
2 4s and a 6. Okay, so I went through a 2 4 amps and a 6 amp DeWalt battery in one day. That's just for myself. And Scott went through his, and I don't know how many you went through, but there are days where we poke hundreds and hundreds of holes. Now, I don't like doing that. That's the least favorite thing of the job is punching holes. That's hard work. But we, like I said, if my groups show up and I'm drilling a lot of holes, I've got a problem, and it's not a good problem.
Well, and a lot of that is depending on what species you're going for, what kind of structure you're fishing. I mean, if you're going for those perch and crappie that are out roaming the basin, it's a lot of trying to move around and stay on those fish and follow those schools. But whereas if you're going for gills and maybe some crappie floating over top those weed tops, you're doing a lot more sitting, waiting, and grinding out those fish.
I do have guys that come though that are prepared to work a basin, and when we're working a basin, we do poke a lot of holes because you're trying to find schools of down here yellow bass or perch, and they roam the basin out here. And it's kind of funny because it seems like during certain parts of the season they'll be in certain parts of the lake, so at least you got a place to start if you've been fishing here for any amount of time whatsoever. But it's like I said, I don't like to drill holes, and if I don't, I won't. But yeah, I like to be able to, if I had several times this year where we've been working this job in this spot for 2 weeks, and everybody's going home with buckets of fish, and then I show up the next day and nothing, not even a mark anywhere, and it's just like, uh-oh, and then you're off to, and then I think by the 3rd move of that morning we were on them, but yeah, that's a bad feeling.
Tell me about when you had that guy who had a stroke, and then I came, dropped down the Panoptics, and they were all 20 feet away.
Yeah. I mean, there's times where, just a move. These were basin fish, and I don't know why, but we were sitting inside the shack, and those fish just we sat there, and the morning was great to us, and the afternoon the bite just stopped. Come to find out, those fish were just 20 feet outside the shack, all the way in a circle around where we had been fishing. I don't know why. But yeah, they had just moved out away from the shack. They were still 20 feet away is all.
That's great.
This guy wasn't mobile. I mean, we were in one, he had a stroke. And so, it was a job just to get him into the shack and get him comfortable and everything. So moving for him was not an option. So.
Yeah, wow. Well, and crazy to be able to have the tools to find those fish, and that sometimes they are so close and so far away at the same time.
Exactly.
That's crazy. We did have a kind of follow-up question here from Terry asking, is it Big Spirit Lake or West Okobojis? So just remind us again your location.
Well, we guide Big Spirit Lake's only a few miles from West Okobojis, so we guide on Big Spirit. We guide on West Okoboji,
East Okoboji,
and East Okoboji, and Minnewaska is a smaller lake. I don't know, 180 acres, maybe 100 acres. But we have a chain of, I think there's about 7 lakes in the system. So We have a lot of
That's
options.
good.
If they're not biting on one lake, we always see it's real easy to just go to the next lake.
That's a lot of fun to have options like that.
Yeah. Yep. We're very lucky.
Awesome. So what else am I forgetting? We talked about some great striker gear. We talked about Iowa having ice longer than I thought. Talked about all kinds of bait and bobber fishing. That's been a lot of fun.
We love bobber fishing. We do a lot of bass fishing too, large and smallmouth bass, and I love to drop shot for those or wacky rig a sinking plastic of some kind. Those are just excellent ways. You can put a lot of bass in the boat in one day here.
In the spring, we do a lot of sight fishing on bass beds because our water is so clear, like we said. And a lot of times we'll go out and we'll find those big boulders, and near those big boulders are a lot of those big smallmouth beds. So a lot of times we'll go out and we'll try fishing for those in up to 20 foot of water, and you're able to see them and watch them swim around, watch them follow your bait, or we'll go up in shallow and fish those shallow weed flats where we'll get those big bass, big largemouth that are spawning.
It's rare you get a day that's calm enough to sight fish bass, but and with little boat traffic. But boy, when you get a day that you can sight fish those big bass, it's a lot of fun.
Well, and we have some people in the comments here asking about not bass, but have you seen any catfish this winter?
I don't think I caught any. We didn't catch any this winter. Sometimes we'll catch one. Did you have one? Oh yeah, I remember.
Yeah, I had one, but it wasn't. It was probably about a 5-6 pounder, just out in, I want to say it was Minnewaska.
East Okoboji is usually, that's where I've caught all my catfish. Well, up here anyway, my catfish through the ice. But we don't target them, but you catch them accidentally sometimes. Man, well, that muskie that we had on that little jig, that's kind of what I thought that was a catfish for the longest time until we actually saw it. Just because of the way it was fighting and the way it bit and what it bit. Normally if we catch a muskie through the ice, it hit a bluegill that we were bringing up, and the bluegill come off, and that little hook will catch its lip as it's exiting its mouth. But this one, he didn't hit a bluegill or anything. It just hit the jig. So I actually thought it was a catfish. But yeah, we do see them, but it's kind of rare here. There is a pretty good numbers of catfish in East Okoboji. They have a catfish tournament or two here every year. And the guys that usually win the tournament took Calvin out catfishing once last summer. And it's not something that Calvin and I do. I don't guide for them.
I do occasionally from shore in places, but I never go out in the boat.
But it was fun to have him be able to go out with those guys, and I think you landed 3 that night, or 4?
I got 3. One was 23 pounds, all channel cat, and it was really fun. I really enjoy going out and doing it with those guys.
Well, catfish are really funny. I love catfish, so that's really, I'm excited to hear about ice fishing cats.
It's not something we target, but we do end up catching 1 or 2, it seems like, every year.
And then we have people asking about your ice rod lineup. Are you thinking about adding to it for next season?
We are, and this one's better yet. I'm really excited about this one. It's a really cool rod. I wish I could tell you more, but it's sweet. It's more sensitive. It's holy cow! I'm blown away by it. The guys did it's fun because the Iconic Fishing is the company, iconicfishing.com, if you want to go check out their stuff. And then they have been sold also in retail stores. But they approached me and asked me to help them make a panfish rod. And they said, what would it take, monetarily, what would it take? And I said, well, how about you just put my name on the rod? And they're like, okay. And I'm like, hey, that's pretty cool. So we helped them this year. We made that 25-inch ultralight, which was just fantastic. It was a great rod, and it was received really well, and it sold. It outsold their expectations and mine. So I'm really excited about that. So we went with another one, and we've been working with prototypes probably for the last half of the ice season, and it was probably the last week of the season. We had it narrowed down to 2, and this is what we went for, and it's basically a hole hopping rod, and it's for fishing outside. You can use it as a dead stick if you're in a 2-man shack and you got a 1-man shack. You've got one hole up further distance away, and then you got your closer hole. You can use that longer rod, but it's a little bit longer rod, and it just helps fishing outside because when you're outside, you want to be able to keep that rod tip down close to the water so the wind isn't blowing your tip or your line around, so you can stand back off the hole and reach down to that water, just inches above, and still see your rod tip in action, and you don't have the wind blowing everything around. So we're pretty pumped about it, just super excited. And there's another twist to this thing too that I just can't talk about, but it'll blow you away, and it blew me away, and it's really cool.
I mean, with how this rod is designed, we were able to go out and fish outside on 40-mile-an-hour winds while it was snowing and almost whiteout conditions. I was able to sit outside and detect my bite and be able to work it with just the tiniest little jig head. I mean, I was only using a 3-millimeter jig head and with no spring bobber, and I'm still able to detect the bite plain as day. And it's I've never seen another rod like this.
Sorry, that was my dog, just walking into the room. All the cats have walked in. Right? I am really excited to hear about that rod, though. And so, where can we follow information, or when information is coming out, where do we get that?
Iconicfishing.com. You'll probably start seeing a little information in late August for sure, I think. Yeah, I mean, I think they're shooting for a release of a little information in late August about the rod. So go to iconicfishing.com. And last year, the rods were sold. I'm going to leave somebody out, and please forgive me. I know they were sold in 3 Shield stores in Iowa City, Des Moines, and Sioux City. Then they were sold here in the area at Cable's Trading Post and Lodge. They were sold at Beginner's Luck Tackle in Lamars, Iowa. There's a bait shop in Aberdeen, South Dakota that I know they were in. Clear Lake Bait and Tackle in Clear Lake, Iowa. And I know maybe I shouldn't have started the list because I'm not going to remember them all, but they were out in retailers, and you can also order them online. But if you don't want to pay the shipping, get them at a retail outlet. So, but our price point was a big deal. That was another thing. Well, they asked me what it would take to get you on board, and I said, I don't want my name on one of these $120 rods because I am not going to spend $120, $130, $140 for an ice fishing rod. I'm not going to do it. What's the point? And so we were able to get this thing down. I think we've got the most sensitive rod out there. You can actually feel the bite as well as see the bite. It's amazing. And we were able to put it on the market, and our components in that rod are probably a little more pricey than some of the high dollar rods. However, I think that I told them that I wanted to keep this thing, in that $80 to $90 range. Came in, we offered it at $79, and it was a great price point. It helped us sell a ton of rods, and people. I haven't gotten any negative feedback on the rod.
They didn't see the warranty claim.
Yeah, they didn't have any warranty claims, and they do have a 5-year warranty. And they did have one get broken during shipping somehow.
Oh.
And it was like Christmas morning when the guy, one of the iconic guys, got up on Christmas morning, and they're located in Des Moines. He woke up on Christmas morning, opened his emails, and saw a lady in a panic because the rod that she had bought her husband arrived and it was broken. So he drove 30 miles that morning and delivered a brand new one to her. So,
And it was within, what, 30 minutes of her even sending out the email.
yeah, he left 30 minutes after sending out the email. So,
Wow, that's really crazy. Talk about customer service. That's awesome.
Good bunch of people. You know, the guy, the actual guy, the hands-on rod builder. Now we have these mass-produced, but the process is a long process to get to a finished product. But the actual rod builder here in the United States, love him to death. He's a retired lieutenant colonel from the Army, and it's his hobby. It's what he loves to do, and he wants to be in the fishing industry. And yeah, so it's been quite a ride with these guys. It's been fun.
That is a lot of fun. Definitely something to check out. The other thing I'm looking to check out is your guide service. Do you still have dates open this coming season?
Oh, I do. I've got plenty open. We're trying to schedule. I'm getting tons. I'm trying to put people off as long as I can right now. I can book June, July, and August, but my April, May is a little iffy right now because of this guy. He's graduating from high school, and when he was probably 14, I put it off this long. I promised him an exotic fishing trip somewhere
out in the ocean, because I've never been able to get out and fish in the ocean before.
So we were looking at all these locations out, you know, like Panama and other places,
especially.
But with COVID going on, and we have both had it, and you know, we I don't think it's wise to travel outside the country right now, for a fishing trip anyway. So anyway, sometime in April or May, I've got to get him on this fishing trip, and we're kind of narrowing it down to probably Florida. That way he can do a couple of really cool dives down there as well, because he is a diver. And so yeah, we're planning that. So my April, May is kind of up in the air. I do have plenty of dates booked, but I'm trying not to book any more for those months right now. And then June, July, August, I got plenty of openings, and you can certainly call and book those at any time. It's you can go to Lake Okobojis Fishing on Facebook. You can contact me. I love to get texts, because when you call, I can answer your questions, but I can't book you most of the time when you call, because I'm away from my book. You know, it's my cell phone. I answer the phone, and you want to book a date, I tell you, can you text me, you know, when we hang up, and then when I get home by my book this evening, I'll look at my book and see what I have available. So text me 712-330-5815, 712-330-5815, and you can book your dates that way.
That's awesome. And then we can follow you on Facebook or other social media then as well?
Yeah, you know, I have Instagram, and I'm not very good at keeping up on Instagram, unfortunately. But I have a pretty good following on Facebook. Lake Okobojis Fishing is where you want to go check that out, on Lake Okobojis Fishing on Facebook. And I post my photos almost every day. In fact, if you want to go right now to Lake Okobojis Fishing, just before we sat down, probably about 10 minutes before we sat down together, I posted a picture of Calvin's first open water fish of the season this year, which he caught yesterday. And it was a monster pike that he caught out of the river, the Little Sioux River, and full of eggs, just a fat, beautiful, unmarked fish that he caught, held it up for a photo, and released it. So
let her go.
It is a true giant of
That's
a pike. Yeah. So Lake Okobojis Fishing, you can see that picture right now. But every day when I have my groups out, at the end of the day, I post photos from each group and their fish that they caught that day. So if you go back 5 years through my photos and oh, look at the bass, he was catching big bass. When was that? You can look at the date and say, ooh, I think I want to go fish in Okoboji on July 23rd because that's when he caught those big bass. And it does kind of year after year after year, it kind of follows the same pattern.
That's really cool. That's definitely something that I would go and check out because, you know, if you're interested in a guide trip, you want to know what you're in for. So that's a lot of fun to be able to do that. Cool.
It's a lot of fun.
For being here.
Oh, thank you for having
loved
me.
it.
Cool. Well, and hopefully someday we can get down there and fish with you guys. That would be a whole lot of fun. I'm interested in your clear water and your giant fish. So
we would love to fish with you guys too. So come on down sometime, you know, through the ice, whatever you want to do, and we'll get you on the fish for sure.
And if he's busy, I'll definitely be able to get you guys.
Perfect.
Awesome. And again, to the people at home, thank you as well for joining us. And we hope to see you again next week.
Yeah.
Awesome. Look forward to it. And thanks again for joining us on this episode of Hook, Line, and Striker.
Good night, everybody.
Bye, guys.